All right, everyone. We are at 6 p.m. We are recording, and I am about to copy our live stream link over to Facebook for viewers at home. So give me just a second to get this rolling, and we'll jump on in. Okay. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome. I am going to start our meeting off with a roll call of committee members. Just let's go ahead around the video screen and just say your name so that we know you are in attendance, please.
I can start. Sally Barney, I'm here.
Kevin Farmer.
Jeff Davis.
Austin Lashley.
Anthony Edwards.
Jim Weller.
Sue, can you say again? You were muted.
Sue Morris.
Great. Thank you, everyone. I'll introduce myself. I'm Lisa Branner. I'm the Community Relations Manager for the town of Silverton, and I am the staff member who is managing the Kendall Mountain Recreation Area Master Plan process. Tonight is a meeting of the Kendall Mountain Recreation Area Master Plan Committee to receive public comment on the draft RFP that was put out for public review a couple of weeks ago. Before we get started, I just want to say how much I appreciate all of the time and effort that this committee has put in. To date, we have more than 500 collective hours that this group has donated toward this project with the goal of betterment of the community in mind. So thank you all for your dedication and your time. We also should say a word to thank Pete McKay and Shane Furman, who also participated on this committee before our most recent board election. And then we had a little bit of changeover in committee roles. So just wanted to start the meeting out with a little bit of gratitude for all the hard work here. You guys have been working pretty hard for the last couple of years, and I do appreciate it. Thank you for your efforts. With that being said, I want to give a little bit of an agenda overview for tonight for the folks participating either as attendees or watching at home on YouTube. We're going to start with a presentation that just kind of outlines where we've been to date and what's been done in this process so far. We'll then open the meeting for public comment. And after public comment, after we've received all comments and everyone has had an opportunity to speak, the committee will go into a little bit of discussion about our next steps. As the committee all knows, we're meeting again on Friday morning to continue with this process, potentially making some revisions to this RFP draft. So we'll talk about those next steps, and then we'll regroup again on Friday. So with that being said, let's jump right into the presentation. I'm going to share my screen. And before I do that, let me just change my view. Okay, Here we go. So hopefully everybody can see that on their screens. As I mentioned, tonight is a meeting to receive input on the draft RFP. And our purpose tonight is, number one, recap the planning process to date and receive comment on the draft RFP. I would like to go over the project timeline just to give everybody a sense of where we've been to date and where we might be headed next. All of this is fluid and subject to change based on, different factors. We certainly, with COVID, were thrown a little bit of curveball and had to make some changes to our planning process. But as we understand it, this is the community or the committee's goals to date. So we started in 2017 with community visioning. And you'll notice that the diagram here is shaped as an hourglass. And if you've heard me speak about this process before, that's intentional, because we started very broadly, inviting all voices from the community to come and engage on the topic of what they wanted to see happen over at Kendall and for the future of Kendall. So we did a series of community visioning meetings starting in 2017. I'll go into a little bit more detail on the next slide on all of these. But then we worked on a viability assessment, which was a professional study done to tell us what the possibilities might be. There was some planning work done before the Kendall Committee was formed, and that group was formed in 2019. This group has worked on a lot of research and education, just studying the issues prior to making a recommendation to the town trustees fairly recently. So in November, this group had a work session with the trustees to discuss their recommendations, and the request for proposal was one of those recommendations. And that's where we are right now, is kind of in the narrow point of the neck of this hourglass. So you'll notice that we had a lot of community engagement early on. As we did some very intense focused work, the committee and staff were really handling the bulk of that. And I'd just like to say that the committee is also a form of community engagement. These are all volunteers from our community. And now as we move along in this process, we are asking for community input on the request for proposals, and we'll be moving again outward in that hourglass shape to have more and more community engagement through the rest of this process, particularly in the master planning process. There will be multiple opportunities for engagement there. When trustees review it, they will be looking for public feedback. The BLM obviously incorporates all kinds of public review in their processes. So there will be lots of opportunity for the community to engage before anything actually happens. If we're lucky, we might be looking at some phased implementation starting in 2024. But all of this, as I mentioned earlier, is somewhat fluid. So just to recap some of the things that we did in the community visioning portion of this process. We started with brainstorming sessions with the school kids. We did youth and adult surveys in the community. And we also did a series of 3 different community visioning meetings that were well attended. What you see on the right there of your screen is a lot of the feedback that we received in one of those meetings on Post-it notes. We had a lot of fun brainstorming and hearing from the community about what they would like to see for Kendall's future. And ultimately, at the end of that process, we felt we had support for the idea of increased recreational opportunities at Kendall. And so the town moved along into its next stage in this process, which was a viability assessment. And that was completed in November of 2018. Our cost was $25,000 for that, but half of it was paid for by the Department of Local Affairs. And they did a market, terrain, and financial analysis of our unique situation. It looked at our location, our geography, the size of Silverton, all of the unique factors that we have here that you would want to consider. And they studied 2 different scenarios. And In those scenarios, we were looking at about an average of 1,000 skiers per day. If you want to put that in perspective, that's roughly what we see from the train in a normal summer. And the study did confirm that expanded skiing would be a possibility, as well as expanded four-season rec over at Kendall. I would like to stress that this is not actually a plan. This is simply a study that was intended as a springboard and a jumping off point for further discussion. And that's, of course, where we headed next. When we asked the community if they wanted to see continued exploration of this concept, we did hear that that was a positive. So the town went ahead into some preparations for the planning process. Both the town of Silverton and San Juan County passed resolutions in 2019 in support of the Kendall Master Plan process and the formation of the Kendall Mountain Recreation Area Master Plan Committee. I'll pause here as well to mention that the Kendall Master Plan is mentioned in many of our planning documents. The Town and County Master Plan mentions it. There was a Blueprint 2.0 study done that mentions the Kendall Master Plan. It's something that the community has vocalized their support for going way back. I mean, at least till the 1950s, possibly before, is this question of how can we make better use of this asset that we have at Kendall. So there were resolutions passed by both of our local governments to that effect. And we did do some fundraising to help pay for this planning process. So grants from both DOLA and Great Outdoors Colorado. The Master Plan Committee was formed in summer of 2019. There was an application process, so people had to formally apply. It's a citizen advisory group, and they are working on behalf of the town trustees. So I want to be really clear about that this group does not have decision-making power on its own. It is a recommending body. They are charged with the task of studying the question of what to do at Kendall and making recommendations to the town trustees. And ultimately, the trustees are the decision makers here. As I mentioned earlier at the very start of the meeting, there's been a collective donation of more than 500 hours from this group. That number was from November. So by now, I think we're well over that. You can see a listing of our current committee members on the right side, as well as emeritus members. And then important for everyone to understand is that one of the first tasks that this group undertook was to develop a mission and a vision. And the mission is to create a plan of development that realizes the full potential of Kendall Mountain Recreation Area and aligns with the community's priorities. And I would like to emphasize the second part of that sentence, that it aligns with the community's priorities. The group is trying to work with the information they have to create the best possible plan for the community. We understand, of course, that the community's needs may shift and change over time. Nobody anticipated COVID. We might be in a different place now than we were 2 or 3 years ago when this process started. It's an evolving process, and the group is working very hard to continue to listen to the community and take the community's needs and priorities into account. The vision of the group is town and county adoption of a master plan for Kendall that will have far-reaching, positive, and sustainable impacts on both Silverton and San Juan County for both quality of life and economic vitality. And I want to underscore again the last part of this sentence, quality of life and economic vitality. Quality of life is first for a reason. The impetus behind this is to develop something for the community that is reflective of the community. The committee has had a lot of discussion around the idea of building it for us, and therefore it will attract them, our visitors, right? But number one priority here is to build an amenity for the community that enhances the quality of life for residents, that potentially attracts new year-round residents so we can develop a more stable year-round economy, and then of course enhances our winter economy. To a large extent, the focus has been on ski and the winter aspect because of the fact that we have a very lopsided economy right now. And so part of the goal here is to look at balancing things summer and winter so that we level out season to season. So moving into the research and education phase, the group spent a lot of time reviewing and analyzing the viability assessment and the findings in there. They talked with mountain town leadership and ski area operators. There was a request for information process. Essentially, the group put together their understanding of what a community vision for Kendall would be. They put that out, and just really to test the waters and see, would anybody be interested in looking at this possibility with us, given all the restraints that we're putting in place for the community. For example, we know we don't want large scale real estate development over at the base area and over at Kendall. So with these parameters in place, with the community's desires being put first and foremost, would anyone be interested in working with us on this possibility? And that was an information gathering exercise in and of itself, and it did confirm that there might be some players who would come to the table and work with the town to help develop this resource. The other thing the group did was an awareness campaign. You might have seen articles in the newspaper. You might be a member of the group's Facebook page. We have an email newsletter that goes out. We've been accepting public comment in our public meetings. And then there are, of course, all kinds of information available to everyone on the town and Kendall websites. And there were some volunteer work days that happened over at Kendall early this fall just for community building. In November, the group presented recommendations to the trustees in a town work session. The document that was produced is called the Recommendations for Consideration in the KMRA Master Planning Process. This is also available on the town website and at Town Hall if folks would like to read it. It's a pretty lengthy document, and it's a distillation of the committee's work that is intended to guide the planning process going forward and spell out the parameters and the limitations of what the community would like to see. The document also examines various issues. So I know affordable housing or workforce housing has been coming up as a topic for many years. It's not a new topic for this community, but it's certainly been a hot button issue lately. That is mentioned in this document, as well as other areas for study and exploration that the town needs to look at, infrastructure needs being one of them. There's a lot enumerated in this document and a lot of suggestions for what needs to happen in order for a successful project to move forward. That's not to say there isn't a lot more work to be done on those topics. There certainly is. And the conclusion that the group came to after their extensive research and education project is that exploring a public-private partnership for operation of Kendall would be the most efficient way to approach this. The town does not have certain expertise. The town does not have financial resources. We are far from the large population centers that oftentimes would fund a nonprofit ski area. And so the first attempt at moving this project forward is looking at this public-private partnership. And that brings us to where we are today. Today, we're here to talk about the request for proposals, which right now is in draft form. This was drafted at the direction of the Board of Trustees. So again, bringing it back to where the decision-making power lies, the committee is working at the behest of the town board. The town trustees asked the group to draft this document and to get public feedback on this document. And then we'll be bringing a revised version of this document back to the trustees for their input and further direction. Again, this is an exploratory first step. We're looking to move into a master planning exercise next, where many of the questions that the community has about the size and scale, what is it actually going to look like, the nuts and bolts of day-to-day operations, how is it going to impact the community? We haven't defined a lot of those things yet, and that's what comes next in a planning process. So step number one is to try to find a partner that might work on that planning exercise with us through a dissemination of that RFP. There will then be a formation of a planning team, a partner selected for that planning process, and a community-focused planning process moving forward from there. As I mentioned earlier, lots and lots of public engagement about what is a fit and what is not a fit for this community as we go through that planning process. And I'd like to stress this last point, that none of the parties involved here are bound to anything as a result of the RFP process. There will ultimately, if we find a partner that the town is comfortable working with and we want to move forward with planning with that partner, there would be a contract and there would be an agreement that would have to be worked out, but that would come afterwards. And until we get through that planning process, we don't really even know what we're talking about as a community. We're still exploring concepts and trying to hone in on what it is that we as a community would like to see happen. So further refining through the planning process and then next steps from there. So before we move into public comment tonight, I would like to just go over some ground rules for Zoom. We are going to be accepting public comment tonight through the raise hand function. If you are in the webinar with us, there should be a little hand icon you can click on. If you are on the phone calling in, you can dial *9 and that will raise your hand. We'll unmute you and ask you to start your video when it's your turn to speak. And as is the format for most town meetings, we're going to limit comment to 3 minutes per person. If you do not want to speak tonight, you are welcome to submit written comments. Some people have already been emailing that in, and I thank you for sending your thoughts in. They have been shared with the committee and will continue to be shared with both the committee and the trustees. You can also send written comment in, preferably by end of day today, so the committee can utilize that in its meeting on Friday. But we won't be using the chat function in tonight's meeting. So if you have written comment on the draft RFP, please send that to the KMRA Master Plan Committee at silverton.co.us. And just a little caveat that I always add: profanity and lewd behavior will result in your removal from the meeting. I do want to emphasize we're looking for some pretty focused comment tonight. I know folks have very strong feelings about this topic, and we certainly as a committee and as town staff and town board all value your thoughts and comments on the overall planning process and the general concept of expanding recreational opportunities at Kendall. But our focus tonight is not on those things. Our focus is specifically on the draft RFP. So we're asking folks to limit their comments to that, and that your comments should be constructive in nature. And of course, please be respectful and keep community at the heart of things. Those of you that have been in meetings that I facilitated in person when we were doing our very first community visioning meetings for Kendall or through the trails process, know that I really like to remind everyone that we are a community and we may not always agree with each other, but there's no reason we can't be respectful and try to work together in a respectful fashion. Remember that these individuals on this committee are volunteers, and they are deserving of a little bit of gratitude and respect for that, if not for just being human beings in general. So with that being said, I am going to just direct folks to a couple of resources, and then we'll go ahead and start the public comment segment of the meeting. So Town of Silverton website, if you go to our community visioning page, there is an enormous amount of information on the Kendall planning process there. If you have not visited that page and perused those documents, I would encourage you to do that. Inform yourself, read the information that is there right from the source. All of the committee's meeting minutes are available to you, so you can read about the discussions that they've had. All of the documents that I have mentioned in the course of this presentation are available there, and we'll continue to update that page as the process continues. There's also information on the Ski Kendall website, and we do also regularly post to the Kendall Mountain Master Plan Facebook page. So all of those resources are available for you. And if you prefer to look at hard copies of any of these documents, they are available at Town Hall. We should have printouts of those available to you. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share and come back to the group. And at this point, I'm just going to ask the committee if anybody has anything that they would like to add to the presentation that I just made. Did I miss any points? Is there anything that you all would like to elaborate on before we jump in on public comment? Okay, then I would go ahead and invite our attendees, excuse me, to feel free to raise your hand. You should see a raise hand icon. It looks like a hand that you can pop up, and we can go ahead and enable you to speak. Just wanted to mention, you're certainly free to express your feelings tonight, but I really would like to encourage community members to give constructive feedback to this committee so that they can continue with the task that they've been given by the trustees. I know we just had an open forum on OHVs that was a little bit of a different format than what we're looking to do tonight. Tonight is a bit more targeted. And, you know, if you have comments about the overall process, we are interested to hear that. The trustees are interested to hear that. But in the interest of respecting everyone's time, we'd like you to really try to focus in on what we're here to do tonight. So I do see Casey Lashley has a hand raised. Casey, I am going to promote you to panelist. You should be able to pop in on screen with both video and sound. And Anthony Edwards will be timing comment tonight for us. So we'll just be keeping an eye on his screen as well for timing. Casey, the floor is yours.
Hi, I just emailed this too because I kind of misunderstood the poster. But as you guys know, my name is Casey Lashley. I'm a year-round business owner and resident here in Silverton. Some of my concerns and questions I would like to share tonight are nearly the same as the last time that I shared these earlier this winter. This draft RFP does not explicitly address affordable or employee housing in any way. I feel as though the public will make clear tonight that this is a major priority in our community. I know I personally have expressed concern to this board regarding affordable and employee housing as it directly relates to the ski resort. Hand in hand with our employee housing crisis that we're currently having is concerns regarding major development and real estate speculation from outside interests. What can this group do to address this concern for members of the community? How better can this RFP reflect or restrict outside development? Importantly, protect our community and our small businesses from this private-public partner. These are my comments on the draft for the RFP for the Kendall Mountain expansion. I truly hope that this planning committee and our town board begin to take the housing shortage seriously as it directly relates to the ski area, as this will have a huge impact on those of us who call Silverton home. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Casey. Do we see any other hands? All right, I do see Julian Roberts with a hand raised. I'm going to promote Julian to speak. Julian, you should be popping in here and can go ahead and speak. And if you'd like to enable video, you can do that as well.
Thank you very much. I recently got a new computer, and it's telling me that I am not able to do that right now. So I'll just leave it without video. My question pertains directly to the questioning for potential partners. And my question is as such. I wonder why we have strayed away from the initial idea of Four Seasons recreation and have continued to focus on this kind of development now in lieu and in face of one of the larger housing crises that Silverton, Colorado has faced in my lifetime, at least. And I ask that we maybe stop the process a little bit here and address some more critical issues rather than putting some words trying to address it inside of a proposal that is going to allow for speculation and for our own ability to live and thrive in these mountains to be infringed upon. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. All right, Jimmy Keene has raised his hand. Jimmy, I'm promoting you to panelist. You can go ahead and enable video if you like, or you can just speak.
Okay, can the panel hear me?
Yes, we can. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. This is Jimmy Keene. For a reference, I have been part of 11 requests for proposals or RFPs in the last 25 years. 10 in a Fortune 500 company and 1 in the government. Those RFPs totaled $1.2 billion. I thoroughly read the Kendall Mountain RFP multiple times. For those on the call who have not read all 8 pages, I highly recommend you do. Why? And I quote Ralph Nader, "Nothing can stop the power of an informed citizenry when it is empowered, organized, and motivated." The following are my callouts and concerns taken directly from the RFP, and I quote, page 2, paragraph 2. Silverton has no interest in becoming another resort town as seen with many similar towns both in and out of Colorado. Page 3, paragraph 1. The community has been clear that they do not want a resort or the large-scale real estate development and loss of character that often comes with it. Page 3, paragraph 2. The town is looking to expand upon the community ski hill and not build a large resort with primary focus on shareholder returns. Up to this point, I was nodding my head in complete and total agreement. But then I came to page 4, section 2, terrain expansion, paragraph 2.2, and I quote, unfortunately, based on the SC Group Viability Assessment's 300 and 800 acre options, please provide up to 3 scenarios. This sentence directly contradicts the 3 statements I read above. As I stated last night on the trustee meeting, Kendall is currently a 16 acres with 30 skiers a day on the weekend. For reference, Aspen is only 673 acres. And this committee is asking for an 800 acre RFP that will either be half the size or 20% larger than Aspen. The SE Group assessment also included 1,000 skiers a day, a 30,000 square foot ski lodge, a base restaurant with 500 seats, an on-mountain restaurant with 200 seats, over 3 acres of parking, a 4,000 square foot maintenance building, and approximately 520 additional hotel rooms beyond the town's current hotel capacity. And I haven't even mentioned the $25 million price tag, which would hang over our city like a dark cloud. It has an annual payment of $1.7 million for 20 years before our town broke even and started making a profit. Well, we can get investors, you may think. Only 3 responded to this town's request for information. The main investor being considered now is branded as MCP or Mountain Capital Partners, or better known as Purgatory Ski Resort. I will tell you, any company with investors will always put these shareholders first, always. I am requesting a complete transparency with this RFP and expansion plan as a whole, as the first 4 pages of this RFP completely contradict itself. The citizens of this town deserve to be heard and deserve transparency from this committee. This RFP fails in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keene. I do see Melody Skinner with a hand raised. Melody, I'm promoting you to panelist, and you should be able to pop in and speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. The floor is yours.
The screen kind of went blank and I thought I lost you. Years ago, there was a company doing business here in town, and one of the employees complained to me that Silverton, he's never seen a town so full of independent thinking people. And for me, that's sort of summed up how we are. We're not a follow the group group. We have our opinions, we want them heard. And as I've said before, I don't think you've listened enough to all of us. This group has been too narrow. It needed to be expanded by 10 at least, probably, to get the majority of people represented. You say that you have no decision-making power, but then I don't know how it's sure that, I don't know how you came to make a decision on the size of the ski area and you didn't put different options out there, like town, the town increasing some or somewhere in the middle, or this one that you want. I kind of feel like, as I've said before, that all of you are really not in touch. I understand you've done a lot of work. I understand also that you really haven't reached the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Do we have any other attendees that would like to chime in? I don't see any raised hands at the moment. Okay, I do see Clemens Branner raising a hand. Clemens, you are being promoted to panelist. You should be popping on screen. If you would like to enable your video, you have that option. You're still muted.
There we go, hopefully.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, so I've participated in all the public meetings leading up to this stuff and been following it pretty closely. And I just want to say thanks to the committee for the hard work you've put into this. You've had to put up with a lot of misinformation and undermining along the way, and I appreciate you guys just trying to stay positive on all this stuff. I'm not an expert on RFPs, but to the extent that I understand it, I think it looks good, and I think you guys should try to just get it out there. And I think I just want to remind everybody that, this is just an exploratory thing. We're asking to see if there's anyone out there who's willing to do this. There may not be someone who wants to do it on the terms that the town wants. And if that's the case, then, it doesn't happen. But we can always say no. The town is in charge of this process. And I think we should, put it out there and let's see what happens. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Clemens. I do see a hand raised. Last four digits of the phone number are 9420. Once you're enabled, if you could let us know your name, we'd appreciate it. And you've been promoted to panelist. You should be able to speak now.
I'm muted. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, Jared Ogden.
All right, Mr. Ogden, the floor is yours.
I'm just curious about the posting and, notifications of any progress on, any participants who are going to participate in private equity investment and what that notification period looks like, and having open comment and review of anything moving forward, because I know this is initial, but I think that's what is being expressed here, is that, and my expression too, is we need to have more information about, those equity partners that are going to maybe, invest in this and what that looks like.
Okay, I don't know if you can see everybody, but I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding. So thank you for that.
I actually can't see anybody, but
Okay.
whatever.
Do you have more comment for us, or is that what you wanted to say?
Well, initial stages here, I think that's the most important thing, is just to have consistent communication through the community, and so that everybody has fair say and knowledge about what's being proposed and by who and for why, and what that term period looks like for comment and review.
Great.
And what is next, what is the next review for everybody? Public comment, is this getting closed after this period? Are we having another comment period?
So my understanding of our process right now, just to answer that question, because I'm sure if you have it, others do. The committee is taking comment on the draft RFP. They're going to make some revisions to that document and then present another draft to the town trustees. The town trustees at that point in time have the opportunity to give input, to suggest revisions, excuse me, and also to, at that point, solicit further public comment if they so desire. If they're discussing it at a town board meeting, the public is absolutely welcome to come speak on that topic. And from there, we would go into actually disseminating the RFP. And when responses were received, I think we'd be looking to solicit public comment again in looking at those responses and sussing out what the community thinks about the responses that were received. So hopefully that gives you at least in the immediate future, what might be happening as far as public engagement and public comment on the process.
Okay, I'm confused because you said Board of Trustees, it's under their discretion to allow public comment, but then you said after that, that there will be a period for open comment. So which one is it?
I think it's both. A lot of this is going to depend upon the direction that we receive from the trustees about where they'd like this committee to head next. So until we hear from the trustees on next steps, I think some of that is a little bit murky. But
Well,
this
I'd like to
committee
hear
is,
that. I don't like murky. I like to have definitive, the term of public comment from the trustees is allowed and part of their rules and regs. And if we want to have public comment, we should be notified. And what does that term of period look like?
right, and I think that has not been determined yet what the time period is. Again, we'll be receiving direction from town trustees in the near future, and that process will be elaborated on in, on the town website, social media, in the newspaper, etc. And Anthony, I don't know if you've got the timer going. I want to make sure that we're being responsive, but also that we're not going over time.
Lisa, the time has passed because you were engaging. I wasn't going to interrupt that discussion.
Okay. Do any of the committees want to try to help answer that question, or you feel like I did a fair representation there? I see Kevin coming in and I see a hand from Austin. So let's have Kevin first and then Austin, please.
Yeah, and I think you'll have multiple times of comment, including when we present this RFP to the town board. There will be an open comment session at that meeting, as well as every meeting that this committee holds. There's an open comment session at the beginning of the meeting. All of them are all public. And so I think we're just getting lost in the weeds a little bit there. There's many opportunities for public comment, and they're not ambiguous.
Thank you, Kevin. Austin, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just that hold on, sorry. Just that, so at town trustee meetings, there's 3 minutes at the beginning of every meeting, 3 minutes at the end of every meeting. When this is specifically brought up for discussion with the trustees, there will be public comment on this RFP, and that this group also accepts public comment and all of our publicly noticed meetings as well. So there's lots of opportunities to engage with this group and with the trustees. It's just, yeah, that I think is hopefully gives you a little bit more clarity, Mr. Ogden.
It doesn't quite, because if there's the committee and then the trustees, there's two entities, and what's 3 minutes going to give us at the front and end of new business or whatever in a meeting? Are these minutes recorded? And, I'm just trying to understand how the posting goes out to everyone who needs to be, involved and have the posting. What avenue is the posting delivered?
So it's sent out onto the town website, and it's noticed on the town website. Underneath boards and committees, the town trustee meetings are noticed on the website. They're posted in the newspaper. All these meetings as well are posted in the newspaper. They're posted on the front door of town hall, as well as the Chamber of Commerce email list includes kind of a list weekly of all these meetings and when they're happening. So there's lots.
So there are actual mailings as well, besides postings and papers and on the courthouse or whatever, or how do we get notified if we don't have a PO box in Silverton?
If you sign up for an email list, there's not mail out notices, but there's an email list from the Chamber of Commerce. And if you email Deanne Gallegos at the Silverton
I want to
Chamber.
interrupt you there for a second because Lisa has a really good efficient system through the town, which might really work better. And I do feel like we're a little bogged down in the process conversation, but Jared, I think that your question is a good one, and we want people to really be involved, and this needs to be clear. So it's worth talking about, but I get emails constantly from the town of Silverton. You can sign up to be on the MailChimp list, and you'll know about every single committee meeting and every single trustee meeting, and it's really efficient, and the Zoom link comes right in that email. So it sounds like if you reached out to Lisa, at some point you can just get on that list, and then you'll get every single, all the meetings that you want to be notified for.
Thank you, Sally and Austin. I didn't want to interrupt you, but yes, the town has worked very hard to put together an email list, and I will share that information toward the end of the meeting. It's one of the final slides, or some additional resources and how you can sign up for the town email list. You can self-select which topics you would like to receive communication about. If you're interested just in the Kendall process, you can select only that. If you'd like to hear about all town meetings, you can select that. There are various different options for people to subscribe. And just the easiest way to find that is if you go to the town website, on the contact page, there is a link to sign up. So hopefully that is helpful. With that, do we have any other hands raised?
I'd like to make another comment if that's okay. Notification is really important for a community to understand how they can get emails and be notified of things if they don't read the paper or aren't notified or aren't online and don't know that they have to go and actually sign up for information. It's in the paper. If they don't read it, I just don't know how everyone in the community is going to be able to be having a voice. And I don't think that's really addressed in this conversation.
Well, thank you for that comment, Mr. Ogden. I think that is good food for thought for not just this committee, but for town council and all of our entities here in town.
Thank you for acknowledging that. And where can I review the minutes of this at some point somehow?
Yes, they are all posted to the town website. So that's the easiest source of information for that. And if you go to the community visioning page on the town website, that's where you'll find all the information about the Kendall process.
Okay, thank you.
You're most welcome. Okay, we do have a hand raised from Angel Cotton. I am promoting you to panelists. You should be able to activate both video and audio if you like.
Okay, thank you. I'll do sound if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay. I just wanted to make a comment, and I know it's been brought up before, but I think it's also super important that it gets heard over and over and over again. But I look at the draft and I see the proposal of having 1,000 visitors a day for us to be able to reach financial goals, to be able to make this a success. And it worries me of having that large amount of influx of people in our small town, that the restaurants and the shops and all these places that want to be open to be able to make money off this will not be able to have employees to work, because the housing shortage is such a major issue and crisis. And to just build upon this huge expansion without making sure that the housing is taken care of forefront most important, because otherwise the rest of it won't be successful because we won't have the people to work in the town. That's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, I see a hand raised by Deneen. You should be able to pop in here with video and audio.
Hello.
Hi, we can hear you now. The floor is yours.
Okay, I'm Dennis Norton. I'm with Deneen. Some of you, probably most of you know who I am, I think. You know, I really like the idea. We've been talking about extending since the early 80s when some of us went up on a ski rope. What I'm hearing today, there was not what we envisioned. It was maybe you ought to think of still making it, instead of against purgatory and working against big resorts, a nice family orientated, was a little bigger. We were talking about switching out Lackawanna with BLM, whatever, and get a couple acres more behind and just make it maybe twice the size, but make it more. And that's what you guys got going right now is, now that I'm in Durango, you're known as the family ski resort. You're not purgatory. You're not going to be the crazies. You don't want 1,000 people a day in Silverton because we had to leave for housing, me and my family. You're not going to have housing for the workers for that big hotel and all the workers at the resort. Ain't going to happen unless you build a lot of cheap housing for people between now and then. And your idea is right. You need this winter stuff. You do. And I think a smaller one, and push the idea of family, young kids, have fun, no craziness. And what people can afford to come up to also. One nice restaurant. You don't need 2 restaurants. You don't want to get that big. You don't want to destroy the Silverton I knew, hopefully. And I feel like the bigger you get, the more you're going to lose what Silverton is known for as its last resort of a Western small community. Once you tell your ride, once you're Aspen, it's over. You can't go back. And I want you to build it. Yes, not as big. That's my comment. You got a good idea. We've been talking about it for 38 years since I've been there. Time to do it, but not a purgatory or not an Aspen. A Silverton family resort. And I think you'll sell it that way better. Thank you. I'll keep back in touch with what's going on.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Hi, everybody.
Okay, I see a hand raised by Liv. Liv, you should be popping in here momentarily.
Emotion.
All right. Thank you. Hi.
We can hear you. The floor is yours.
Awesome. So just piggybacking off of what was just said, I'd like to invite the committee to deeply consider Silverton's location. Park City, on the back of the Wasatch, has access to Salt Lake City, a giant valley metropolis of workers who commute to Park City. Telluride, still proximity to Norwood, where most of the workers live. Where would workers live if they wanted to work in Silverton? Ask yourself that right now, as we see Durango home prices on average for a single family home shooting above $400,000. Ridgeway shooting above $400,000. Workers are often my age, in their 20s. We cannot afford $400,000 homes, and we cannot afford rent in places like Telluride or Park City, which is how you end up with so many of us living out of our vans, trying to make this life where we love skiing work. A massive overhaul of Kendall to 800 acres would be devastating for Silverton as a community right now. There's already a housing shortage. As a working professional, I can't find a home to buy, despite my husband and I being a dual income household. And we're not the service workers anymore, but we were there, and where would they go if we don't even have a place to go? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Liv. Okay. Margot is on the line. Margot, you are being promoted to panelist. Margot, if you would like to unmute, there you go.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lisa. This is a little harsh what I have to say here, but the basic input of this comment is that, like Melody, I feel that the committee is not listening to the community. To start with, notification of meetings, which Mr. Ogden was talking about. I could not find on your Kendall Mountain Master Plan page how to get onto the Zoom meeting. I had to ask members of the public how to get on because I didn't have the paper at home, you know? And that's obstructive. That stands in the way of public comment. Another thing, we don't know how many people are on this meeting. I would really like to know how big the audience is. The public-private partnership makes many of us super uncomfortable. The committee had, you're involving a private investor in our community asset. And our community, I don't believe is comfortable with that. I doubt your assertion of public support. I feel like the committee has little public trust and is losing more all the time. You don't answer our questions and concerns. You've never considered options other than a public-private partnership. This is supposed to be public comment, but typically we listen to you for 25 minutes, again, demonstrating that you haven't heard us. I honestly believe that you are not asking for public comment so as to incorporate it into your plan. I think you're asking for public comment to say, as you spent 25 minutes saying, that you have community input, but you don't. So that's all I have to say. I thank you for your, I thank you for your work on this. I would feel a lot more comfortable with the Kendall Mountain Committee if you return to real community-based funding for this. A nonprofit, nonprofits can raise a heck of a lot of money. A nonprofit that would allow the town to operate Kendall Mountain, to continue to develop, to operate, and get that ice rink people want, the paths by the river people want. So anyhow, that's what I had to say, and thanks for listening.
Thank you, Margot. I see a hand raised by Doug Kraus. Doug, you are being promoted to speak.
Hello?
We can hear you loud and clear, Doug.
Hi, my name is Doug Kraus. I live down here on Bluff Street. I've been following this process closely for the last 4 years now. It's been apparently since 2017. And in my opinion, I think the flow of information has been outstanding. I don't see any lack of transparency. Quite the contrary. I think for those that are interested in being informed regarding this process, the tools are there to inform our community and allow them to engage. The only other thing that I wanted to say is my understanding was that the purpose of this meeting was to provide a community forum for specific comments on the draft RFP. And I've heard almost none of those, which I think is quite unfortunate. I think this is our opportunity to shape the future of our community. And it's disappointing to me that people seem more interested in venting frustrations than engaging the process, perhaps is the best way to put it. So this is a draft RFP. It's not a plan. The viability study was not a plan. There is no plan. We're working our way towards hopefully someday coming up with a plan. And we're 4 years in. If you think that's too fast, I disagree with your pace. So I just like to thank you all, and I appreciate your patience and your diligence in working towards this. Cheers.
Thank you, Doug. All righty. Bouncing back to our attendee list. I see a hand raised by a phone number ending in 9420. I'm not certain if that's the phone number that we already engaged with. I'm going ahead and promoting you to panelist. If you could let us know your name.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you, Lisa. I know as administrator of the Zoom, it might be difficult for people to, because you were restricting each participants number at 46, just to make a comment for the 2 people ago about not even knowing how many people are commenting on this process today right now. But and in response to what he was just saying, I think that a lot of us here have followed this plan, and I have read all of it. I know it's going to take multiple years. I mean, lots of stuff. I mean, you know, Forest Service studies, wetlands, everything, you know, expansion and all that's going to take a long time. You know, I think that, I feel like for me that the expansion has potential. You're getting comments from others that, you know, don't want it to be so big, but I understand that all the different levels and stages of expansion are going to take a long time. I think that people should understand that this isn't going to be something that's going to happen right away. It's going to take many years and many stages. You know, as I recall, there were 5 or 6, up to 8 maybe, all the way at the top. But it is going to take a lot of investment, and that's my concern, is understanding who those people are that are going to, you know, how's the concession going to go with, you know, is it the city or the town controlling the concession? Who's the private equity? Are they, you know, who's pulling all that together is really important to me, and making sure that there is, you know, an open book, basically understanding who's involved and how that process of getting voting done in public comment is very important to allow people to have their voice. And I think, yes, you said everything you just said about having a newspaper or the website, postings, but I've been hearing that there are people that are just, they don't have the knowledge or how to get there, and that's frustrating. But I did want to acknowledge what wasn't Jimmy, but whoever was just talking, that yeah, there's transparency there, but the way to access it can be challenging to get if you're not paying attention. And I want to just say, the 46 people who are participants in this right now is not enough people at all. That is only 46 people in this comment period right now, and I'm not satisfied with that whatsoever. And I would like to do whatever I can to help facilitate, get knowledge and information to those that really matter in the community, because this is a community decision. And I agree that I don't feel like, I mean, I know this expansion levels, and it's going to take private equity. The state and the county don't have money to do this. No way. You know, town of Silverton does not have the funding. And that was part of the RFP. That's why it's an RFP. And it's important for people to understand what that means and who's involved and who the players are going to be and whoever actually pulls it together. And it's going to be a lot of people, you know.
Jared,
I'm out of time.
Yeah, you're out of time, and I'm kind of thinking about other participants who are here attending, and just in the interest of fairness and time, if you wanted to continue your comments, it would be awesome for you to email them. Lisa provided that earlier in the meeting. I'm sure she'll provide it at the end, but I think it would be important to hear from everybody.
I agree, Sally. I just wanted to chime in for a second. I agree. Thank you very much. I won't say anything further. Thank you very much.
Okay, next up we have Cole. Cole, you should be popping in here. And you should be able to turn on both sound and video.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Right on, right on. Well, everybody's getting kind of beaten on this whole thing about public housing, which is very important. I mean, we do definitely need some housing before we, pursue a lot of this with employees, et cetera. Then also, is there an option where the people of the community can actually have some of the shares inside the actual Kendall Mountain development if there is such an expansion to go forward? That'll be all my comments.
Great. Thank you, Cole.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Okay, do we have any other public comment? I'm not seeing hands raised at the moment. All right, I do see Lloyd Swartz with a hand raised. Lloyd, you should be able to speak momentarily.
Yeah, hey guys, hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm playing with a new computer here. As a matter of fact, I went to join this meeting, realized I had to download Zoom all over again. Oh yeah, new computer. I'm gonna sort of be the devil's advocate here, guys. I was in town a couple years ago and stand over near where the train comes in, and I don't even remember what I was doing. I was just standing there. All of a sudden, a few hundred people, start clamoring around and getting off the train and they start going and banging on all the doors, trying to open up and get it. And I realize all the shops are closed. This is like in, mid to late October. And, it really got me thinking that, I'm going to retire in Silverton. I've already got my land. I know what I'm going to do. And, I want to see a town that's successful in the long term. And this town just subsides on a very thin margin. And certainly the biggest issue this town has is not having a year-round viability. I want to be able to go and eat my favorite restaurant in the winter. I want to be able to go shop in shops before Christmas. But right now, people can't make a living in this town in the winter. And I think it just has to be stated. We know this town has to grow. We know this town needs year-round viability. We also know we don't want to lose the character in this town. So there's the big challenge, right? But I mean, we got to face that challenge. We got to face the challenge of housing. We got to face the challenge of all the challenges of keeping that character, keeping those dirt streets, keeping that stoplight, no stoplights in town, not having a, Disney World, not having a 20-story, whatever, motel, mega motel. We have to address all that, but we all have to be realistic in the fact that and acknowledge that long-term success of this town, it's going to require some growth. It's going to require some year-round viability. And so I really support the Kendall Mountain Project. I want to see it done right. I don't want to see the town overrun. I don't want to see, lose the character, the feel, everything that Silverton is. I just want to see it be added to and grow to. So it needs to be done cautiously. It needs to be done right. But I really feel like you guys have got a great start on this, and hopefully this will become something amazing, guys.
Thank you, Lloyd. Okay, we have another hand raised from Doug Kraus, but I'm assured that it's actually Lauren Glick that wants to speak. So I'm going to go ahead and promote Doug to panelist again.
Whoop. Hello?
Hi there, Lauren. You have the floor.
Okay. I would just like to say that I like this town a lot. It's my home. I love being part of the process. I see lots of positives here. I can be a skeptic about certain aspects of it. But more than anything, I recognize that we're not in the 90s or the aughts or the teens anymore. We're in 2021 and it's a different world now. And things are going to change, and it's inevitable. It's something we can't fight. But to recognize that is to move forward into a positive future. And that means accepting things that are going to change and being part of the process. Beyond that, thanks for being transparent and making it easy to be involved if you want to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Next up, we have Sarah Tesher with a hand raised. Sarah, you should be popping in here.
Hi, yeah. Let's see, I just echo what Lauren says, but I also, the request for a proposal within your guys' document that you sent, I just want to read from it. The town is looking at expansion options that put locals first. This effort is intended to improve the quality of life for Silvertonians of all socioeconomic backgrounds, rather than make the town appealing as a second home destination or an investment opportunity. The community has been clear that they do not want a resort or a large-scale real estate development and the loss of character that often comes with it. So, I mean, I guess if we're just talking about the RFP at this point, then I feel like the RFP addresses everything that everybody has talked about up to this point. So that's my comment.
Thanks, Sarah. Do we have anyone else who'd like to speak? Hang on a second, I've got too many things popping up on my screen. Okay, I have somebody identified as GRP. I'm going to go ahead and promote you to panelist. If you could tell us your name before you start speaking, please.
Hey, all right. Hey, GRP, I'm Ann, and this is Steven, and we're homeowners. We're longtime residents here, about 15 to 17 years. And I think we are probably the most active family over at Kendall and have been for the last decade. We're pretty much there every single weekend. We've got 3 kids here and have been very big supporters of this process and the communication and everything that you all are doing. I guess first and foremost, we do support the RFP and we support you getting it out there, and want to thank you all for all the work that you have done. I would love to put an invitation out to folks that are skeptical or fearful, because I do hear a lot of fear from comments here. Please come over to Kendall. It is absolutely amazing. I think it's the heart of the community next to the school here in town. And I will say, without probably much marketing at all this year, because I haven't really seen too much, Kendall has taken off. People have discovered it. People are there, they're having fun, people are traveling here, and it's fun and it's amazing, and it shows a lot of the potential of what this place could be. I agree with employee housing, and I think that that will be addressed throughout the process. I think with growth, things like that will come along. I disagree with some of the comments about lack of information. I think that there have been multiple avenues for people to be active and be participatory in this process. We have been a part of this process the entire time, and it is a two-way street. People need to also be active and get out there and take some responsibility for finding out the information for themselves. So I agree with what Clem has said, what Cole has said, what Lloyd said. But again, we just support this RFP and all that you all have been doing, and truly believe that Kendall is an amazing asset, and we have an opportunity to grow positively as a community.
I'll add that there's a line, one thing consistent in history is man has not learned from history. Here we are able to break away from that trend and utilize knowledge from other towns that we do not care to be like. And you have a chance, we have a chance to shape what this town becomes. Otherwise, we can sit back and get overrun and let it be taken up by out-of-town interest, which is the history of this town. And we have a chance to have a say in our future business in this town with this opportunity with the RFP. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen Ann. All right, do we have anyone else that would like to speak? I do see a hand. Give me a second. Okay, Liv would like to comment again. Committee members, do we want to allow additional feedback? Does that sound good? All right, Liv,
Lisa, can you just make sure that there's not a second person in that household?
Oop, I think I just muted you accidentally, Liv.
There is a second person in my household, but he's not getting on. I just wanted to say I do support all of this, and I appreciate the committee, and I appreciate all the efforts that you've put into it. And I just got off too early last time and didn't get to say that. So that was all.
Thank you.
Lisa.
Yes, Sally.
I wondered if I might say a little something and give people a chance, like if they want to raise their hands. Are you guys comfortable with that? I'm going rogue. I guess there are so many more people here tonight than normally attend our meetings, and so this is something that we have been able to talk about and discuss a lot in our meetings, but they aren't as well attended. So tonight feels like a bit of an opportunity to just share, I guess, sort of my thoughts on the RFP process. I think the document itself is really strong, and I want to thank the committee members who worked so hard on it, because I do think it expresses really the sentiment of the community, and it's a result of a community-driven process. I am hearing the concerns, and I think a lot of the concerns you're expressing tonight, I'll speak for myself. They're my concerns too. I think the way I view the RFP process, like, we want to put this out. And the reason is because it's part of our information gathering. You know, there are only so many phone calls that you can make to municipal leadership in other communities, or talking to people that we know who work in planning and town administration and ski area management. And then at some point, we kind of need to know what this looks like in our own community and what's out there for us. And so the RFP, in my mind, is an exploratory process that ends with information for our community. It's going to tell us whether or not a private partner will work. And if we got 8 private investors from Switzerland who we don't know and they don't seem to fit with us, then that's a no-go for us. I know I'll say that as an individual, but I don't see that being a great fit for our community. The RFP is not it's not a blank check. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that there's an expansion happening at all. It's what it means is that we know whether or not partners are interested in this project, who they are, and what sort of fit they could potentially be with our town. So without the RFP, we're kind of back with what Dennis was saying. We're back with, like, we've talked about it, but what would it look like? The RFP is also not it's not a blank check to build a giant resort. You know, that would not be a good fit. If a respondent replies to the RFP with that idea in mind, that's not a good fit for us. And so, but that doesn't mean that we don't want to put out an RFP, because then we just won't know who wants to come to the table at all. So I share discomfort in the idea of private partner. I think private investment sounds pretty scary to me personally. I think, you know, because Silverton is so small and there's a lot for sale, it's vulnerable, and that makes me pretty uncomfortable, but it doesn't make me want to not find out who they are and what they have to offer for our community. So I'm in favor of creating this document with all of this feedback that we've received and making it the best possible document that we can create, so that we can go forward knowing that we've done our best work in putting out the reflection of what we want in a private partner. And then we know who responds to our best work. And then we go from there. And I think it does get a little unclear because it's the unknown. We don't know who responds. We don't know what they have to say. But I'd really like us to just explore this, because there really is no major community consequence in issuing an RFP. So I also kind of want to touch on, because we're all here together tonight, that this idea of making Kendall different doesn't mean making Kendall giant. It doesn't mean any restaurants doesn't mean anything. I think Doug Kraus spoke really well. It's just not a plan at all. We're so far out from that. But the idea is definitely not a secret. And, you know, the committee could let it go, and we could stop researching, and we could stop keeping our arms around the idea and keeping our arms around the community and our arms around the character and the really important feel of our community. And I don't know that this would happen, but what I worry about is that a big private investor does come in and want to take it on as a project. So I guess right now I feel a lot more comfortable having a committee that is connected and does hear public comment, you know, really taking this on with seriousness and integrity and caution, and to try and do our best work so that the end result can be really community driven and really address the needs that we know we have. So I guess I really want to see this RFP go out, because without it, you know, the process will be compromised and undermined. It's probably more than 3 minutes. I didn't, but it looks like Melody has her hand up again, so she gave her some.
I also saw Kevin raising a hand. I would pause at this juncture and just ask the committee how they'd like to proceed. Do we want to allow multiple comments? Do we want to have Kevin speak and then we can go back to attendees? How would you guys like to handle this?
Well, since I had my hand raised, I'll speak my component of that first. I think if we're responding to just things that, you know, people have said, or that this committee is now kind of trying to digest through, you know, a little bit of a summary of what we've heard and what we feel about kind of the process to date in tonight's meeting and what we've heard, I'd encourage the responses to be towards the RFP and not towards the comments that are being made now, because it just turns into a conversation that can be had outside of this. I do want to make a quick mention of hearing the affordable housing issue as a primary concern for the community, and it's definitely a concern for me as a business owner. I've been strapped and unable to grow past a certain component and had to pivot pretty substantially because of the lack of employment base and the ability for people to find employee housing and affordable housing. And so it's top of my priority list from outside of just this committee, but just as a fellow Silvertonian. And I'd encourage those that are concerned about the forward-looking aspects of opportunities that this town is looking at in the growth side of things, and trying to do it in a way that's well thought out and done diligently, versus attacking every item of growth with concerns around how are people going to live here if we grow past what we're currently at. I think there's some very unique tools that can be used for the affordable housing component that I just haven't heard discussed, and I haven't been very vocal about it to date. But really, just so that everybody knows, it's not really the obligation or the intent of this committee to solve that problem. It's the town boards committee and the master planning process. You know, those are the areas where we need to provide solutions to the affordable housing crisis that we're currently dealing with and will continue to deal with. And so there's things like land trust funds that can basically, you know, take speculation dollars that are coming in to develop and require it to be put into a nonprofit fund that goes directly towards affordable housing for the community. Those are the types of things that we need to be talking about. Those solutions to our problems, not trying to derail progress for leveling out the economics of our town. We have a completely lopsided component, and it's not that we're building this for a resort of, or looking at building this for a resort of people and to service all of their needs. It's for our community, based on a desire for the community to have a little larger ski hill. I would love to go over there and ski. I just don't, because I'm not overly intrigued by Silverton, and I don't have kids, and there's not a lot of reason for me to go over there than a couple times a year. I miss the community events and stuff, and really look forward to having those start back up after COVID. But I'm really hopeful that as we're moving forward and really trying to address the affordable housing crisis, that we look at those solutions, that we look at, you know, how do we curtail speculation dollars that are coming in to help solve those problems, versus trying to derail every project that's happening in town because it looks like it's going to bring more of that same issue. And that's all I have to say regarding that. I appreciate the comments from everybody and the sentiment. And there was some great feedback on the RFP, and I look forward to discussing that with the other community members on Friday to get that hammered out.
Thanks, Kevin. Austin?
Thanks, Lisa. Just at first, I wanted to have a comment. I would prefer that we don't round robin and let the public kind of recirculate through this. It tends to kind of devolve fairly quickly in our public meeting processes. And I'm also missing a meeting right now for our OHV grant with that we're applying for with Hinsdale Uray and San Miguel right now. And so I would like to catch that meeting and be involved in that, since we have a big presentation for the grant committee on Thursday morning. Just to a couple of the points here. Yeah, I think that a lot of us really do see a lot of these issues, and we feel and have discussed a lot of these issues that you all are very concerned about as well. This committee has been tasked with kind of a narrow focus of bringing, ultimately getting to this level of an RFP is like one of our major milestones and goals. And so for those of you who have commented on the process in the RFP and want to continue to comment on making this RFP the best document that we possibly can, that's what this committee has been working on. The housing aspect of it, I do think is something that we'll discuss as a committee, and try to, at least I hope that I can speak for some other folks on here, that we can try and involve some language in this as a proposal for partners to come on. But the housing crisis in this town has changed significantly since the formation of this group. 4 years ago, when we started this, the Anvil Mountain subdivision was not even complete yet at that point. And it's an issue that we absolutely need to continue to work on all the time. And COVID has definitely exacerbated that problem, made it more emergent, that we tackle and deal with it, and also made it a lot harder for us to deal with as well, since we can't meet in the same room face to face anymore. We also have been prepared for changes to this process and to this RFP, and this is in no way something that is set in stone or developed as a firm plan of something that is going to be this resort and the ski lifts are going to go here. That's just like not at all the level that we're at, and it's going to take years to get there. And so this group has been working to this point to just try and find people that can help bring an expansion of Kendall and the expansion that we want to see as a community in a town, not a mega resort or something that we don't want. And we're absolutely looking forward to having public participation at every step through the way here. I know that people feel a little frustrated and left out, but there's been a lot of opportunity to be involved in this process, and it is daunting and at times frustrating to be involved with. How many meetings and how much we really do hash this out. So for those of you who feel like you've been left out, it's not too late. There's meetings every other week, and there's a lot of them. So please feel free to be involved. And I guess that's all I really have to say right now.
Okay, any other committee members want to comment? I'm not seeing any unique hands raised in the attendee group. I'll continue to kind of watch that. If anybody else wants to chime in here, or are we ready to move into just discussion of our next steps for Friday? Next steps? Okay. So I did send out probably 3 different emails to you all with the written comment that I had received up until, I don't know, just shortly after lunchtime today. I'm expecting there probably will be some more coming in. So I will go ahead and get that sent out to you all tomorrow morning. Do you have any special requests for that, or any thoughts about how you want to approach things on Friday? I don't know if we want to talk about a little bit of a framework for our discussion on Friday now. Sally, do you have some thoughts?
Well, I just wonder, Lisa, if there's a way of like creating sort of a list of these comments that are directly related to the RFP, and then we just can kind of flag them as we go section by section. We had a comment on 2.1, we had a comment on this, if we can kind of just take it sequentially in that way. But if you were able to just sort of mark which comment pertained to which section, that might be really helpful.
Okay, and I think we'll have some more generalized comments as well that still apply, and we may want to edit, you know, the narrative a bit more to be in alignment with some of those comments. But that's great as far as trying to identify what applies to specific sections of the document.
I think on the general comments or concerns that's where we need to have, and it needs to be included as an addendum or however we decide to do it, discussing the issues with housing, employment, and those matters that have been brought up this evening.
And I think just from my perspective, via the comments from the written that have come in via email, as well as the ones that have been shared tonight, in regards specifically to the RFP, has been how to incorporate and tie in the concern for affordable housing into the document to make sure that that is clear to whoever this potential partner is, that is going to be an immense challenge for them as well as the community at large. I think that's definitely an item that we need to talk about how and where and how that all works into the document succinctly. And then I think there's the other piece that I heard from a few folks is around the referencing the SE group viability study in the 300 to 800 acres. I think we can kind of open that up a little bit more and not reference that document specifically, because that's really not our bookends. Our bookends are to the example of, you know, adding an acre or doubling it in size versus adding 300 acres. And so I think because those are totally right, it's just we're using that, you know, that document as a step along the way. So I think we can, from my perspective on the actual document itself, those are the areas that we need to focus on in the conversation and figuring out how to incorporate those in. The other ones are absolutely concerns addendum that should go along with this to the board as we present this as part of the overall feedback. And I'm hopeful, and I'm assuming that most of these folks that have spoke tonight will speak at that town board meeting, and I will as well bring up the, you know, the affordable housing and some of the tools that we can utilize as a community in that time frame. It's a good platform for us to do that. So
I like the idea of sort of this idea of an addendum of topics or concerns that aren't specifically related to the RFP, but we want to convey them and we want to somehow make sure those aren't getting lost. So, you know, perhaps there's a compilation of that with particular call out for the things that folks seem to be mentioning again and again that are really kind of hot topics.
Lisa, just out of curiosity, is the end of the, and I'm not suggesting we need to finish our conversation now, but at the end of the meeting, are we going to have up the slide that identifies how people can continue to comment?
Yes.
And when is that? What's the date for that ending? If I'm ahead of myself, or ahead of us, that's fine.
So Anthony, are you speaking about when are we looking to receive public comment on the RFP by?
Yeah, is it tonight if they want to put into that email? Is that correct?
I think what we had published was that today was the final day for public comment. We were anticipating this meeting to kind of be the end cap on it.
Okay.
I assume there'll be some more comments coming in this evening. My concern is making sure that you all have time to review what comes in before we meet on Friday. So
Okay.
I think that's why we set the 9th as our cutoff for that.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification.
Yep. Okay. Any more discussion on the part of the committee? Okay, I've tried to take good notes. I'll probably watch the recording a second time just to see if there's anything that I missed and be able to get that out to you guys as well. It seemed like most of you were taking some pretty copious notes as well. If there isn't further discussion on the part of the committee, I'm going to do a screen share again. I want to just again reiterate for the folks in the webinar as attendees or watching at home on YouTube, all of the information pertaining to this process is available on the community visioning page of the town website. So that's townofsilverton.colorado.gov/community-visioning. You'll also find a lot of that on the Kendall website. There is a specific page just on the master plan there. And then if you're on Facebook, you can search for Kendall Mountain Master Plan. We do share information there as well. And there are printed copies, of all of the various documents, the draft RFP, the planning recommendations, the RFI, and the responses we received to that, and the viability assessment at Town Hall. 2 upcoming meetings that folks may want to put on their calendar and try to attend. This Friday, March 12th, we are meeting. That is incorrect. That is at 10:30 a.m. I apologize for that typo. And then we have a regular meeting on March 16th at 3 p.m. And the login information for both of those meetings is the same as it was for tonight's meeting. And I would encourage anyone who's interested in this process or in attending meetings to sign up for the Town of Silverton email list. Again, townofsilverton.colorado.gov/contact/us will get you to our contact page, or it's in the main navigation. It's pretty obvious as well when you go to the town website, and there is a sign up form available there. So thank you everybody who is here tonight. There were definitely some new faces and new residents to the community. So I hope it was helpful for us to review the process to date. I appreciate the feedback that we got from everyone. My email address and the committee's email address are here on this last slide. It's lbranner@silverton.co.us or KMRA Master Plan Committee at silverton.co.us. All right. Anything else from our committee members? All right. Well, again, I'm really thankful that we had great participation tonight and heard from many community members. I think this will be some good fodder for edits. So I'll see you all back here in Zoom 10:30 a.m. on Friday morning.
Thanks for participating, everybody. Lisa, great presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great night, everyone.